Welcome to the fastest daf in town. Today on Masechtas Bava Metzia daf Ayin Vav. We're going to begin on Ayin Hamid Beis with a breath of relief, finished with Eza Neshach, at least for a little while, and now we're going to continue with Hasaycher Asumanim. So a person who hires workers, Vihitu Zed Zeh, and they deceived one another, and the Gemara is going to spend most of the Amud discussing what exactly happened. All they would be able to do is to have some type of complaint against each other, but nothing which will actually help them as far as taking them to court and to be able to get any money from one another. Okay. And then the Mishnah says, Sachar es hachamar. Let's say you hire a donkey driver, or for that matter, bes hakadar, or a wagon driver, and the reason why you hired them was Lahavi Pir Yafarid. You wanted them to be able to bring either, Rashi says, it's a Kader Balkaron, it's referring to wood, V'chalilim L'kalo Olames, or let's say you wanted them to transport flutes, which was the purpose to be Mesameach HaChasan and Kala, or for a mace, for someone who died, as a form of lamenting. It's interesting that we use the exact same instrument. Obviously, music doesn't mean it's the same musical notes, but for the same instrument, one is tamima sameach and one is l'kainin. Upoalin l'alois pishtana min hamishra. You hire workers to bring flax from the area where it was produced. Chol davar she'avid. For that matter, anything in which there's a davar ha'avid. Now, davar ha'avid means, somewhere, like we hear that in Chol HaMoed, davar she'avid means that if it's not done now, it's done later, there's going to be a loss. And it makes sense because, for example, to be Masameach HaChasan, or someone who's in Shiva, this is very time sensitive, and all these other items are time sensitive. It needs to be done right away or it'll become a problem. Like, for example, keeping flax in water will ruin it, so therefore you have to remove it out of the water or else it comes a davar she'avid. So you hire them, then all of a sudden the chazbehen, and let's say the worker quits. Now the problem is, now you're stuck and you don't have any workers. You're going to end up losing out on real money in case of the flax, for example. So Malkum Shein Sham Adam, if there's a place where there's no one else to be able to do this job, you can't rehire anyone, then Soichalehim Oy Matan. So your options are, you can hire more expensive workers, or Matan, literally you can trick the worker to do it, which we'll have to understand exactly what that means. But Rashi says over here, when it says v'chazru behen, Rashi points out it's la'achar she'asu mixas. They already did some of the job. They kind of like began. So, okay. Chasechasu manim v'chazru behen yadam al tachtaina. So let's say, this is actually on the next piece, you hire workers to do malacha b'kablanis, and again they retract after they did a little bit, yadam al tachtaina. So they have the bottom hand, says Rashi. Im hukru poalim. If, let's say, the price goes up, and it might see mi shigmarena b'sachar, and you need someone basically to finish it up, ma'akev miskar memasha asu kol ma shenitzrach l'haitzi ad shetigmar malachtai b'schar shepasek imelu. So even though they did some work, you could withhold this payment basically until they finish the job. V'im huzlu po'al, let's say the price goes down, v'im seshigmarena b'pachais, and it turns out that now you could hire someone to finish up the job for less. So then in that case, yoshum lohem masha asu, pay them for whatever they did, v'yitan hem masha pasak, asu chatzia yitan lehem chatzi secharon. If they did half the job, give them half of their wages. V'en yichon loimer lo hori po'al macherim takteim ligmar malachtem v'tein lanu kos secharenu chutz memasha nato elu. You can't say, well, I see that the prices fluctuated. No, they lose out. So either if the prices go up, so then you don't have to understand this. It seems like you can kind of like hold their, not pay them so fast, to hopefully incentivize them to hopefully work for you to finish up the job, or you could just pay them for what they did, and that's it. As we continue, and that's in the situation where the workers quit in the middle. But let's say the Baal Bayis quit, tells them to stop working, not because of a form of negligence, he just doesn't want them to work anymore, then Yado al Tachtaina. And then that situation, the workers have the upper hand, and the Baal Bayis has the lower hand. So in the Rashi, Yitilham Lafima Sha'asu. So if they did their job, they have to be paid what they did. V'imhuzlu Malechas Poalim, let's say it went down the work, Al Karch Yitilham Kama Shapasak, you have to pay them Chus Mashasar Chaitzam Bahashal Masa. Okay. So the general rule is, as you can understand, whoever is the one that is like in breach of contract, whoever changed or deviated from what they were supposed to do, so they have the lower hand, and the person who was the harmed party has the upper hand. Says Gemara, it says the workers deceived one another. Well, or what exactly does that mean? Again, it must mean the workers deceived each other. What happened? So the person turned to a guy who was a worker, who was also a shliach, and he said, quote, Zil oigerli poalim, go and hire for me some workers. So this guy, who was like this middleman, found a bunch of his buddies, but he deceived his friends. So Hechidami, how did he deceive him? If the Baal Bayis said, I'm going to pay you these guys, everyone 4 zuz a day, and he told every one of them, you're going to get paid 3. Now those guys accepted the job. So if they accepted to do the job for 3 zuz, even though the Baal Bayis was willing to pay them 4, they didn't know that. So the fact that he told his friends that you're going to get paid 3 zuz, that's it, you're going to get paid 3 zuz. So why would they have any complaints? They're the ones who accepted the job. Their arms weren't twisted. If let's say the Baal Bayis says 3, and the workers hired, this worker hired them for 4. Now again, the Baal Bayis is only going to pay him 3 because that's how much he said. For some reason, this guy was having difficulty, so he said, you know what, you're going to get paid 4. Even though the boss never said that's how much they were going to get paid. So, Hechidami. If this guy said that the payment is on me, so Nesavluhu Medidei. So the Shliach is the one who's going to owe the money. So the fact, if he said that language, he's basically accepting him upon himself that he will make sure these guys get paid 4. So even though the Baal Bayis only pays 3, he has to come up with the difference. The Sanya. And he shows his friend's field. You have to pay him the full amount. In other words, he, the poil, should pay the friends the extra zuz, as we see clearly in this case. So, how do we that can't be the case. So, lo tzricha di'armuhu sacharchem al Baal Bayis. So, the Baal Bayis said you only get 3. Now, he said 4, but the way that the Baal Bayis said it. So, therefore, they're only going to get 3 because that's how much the Baal Bayis said. So, v'lechsi poalim hechi mitagri. I understand. Let's just find out how much the payment for work is. What's the difference? You should look at what the minimum wage is. So just figure it out that way. Or how much the going rate is for getting paid for a day. And that should be a way to determine all this. So tzricha de'ika demigar barba, de'ika demitagar betlasa. Some get paid 4 and some get 3 for the same job. Because they said to him, Ilab di amrit lan barba. If it wasn't for the fact you said 4, Tarchinon, we would have troubled ourselves. Umitagrinon barba, and we would have found a different job for 4. there's a bunch of jobs available. Some of them pay 3, some of them pay 4. The jobs that pay 4 are harder to find. But the truth is, if you would have if we knew we were only going to get paid 3, we would have certainly taken the job somewhere else and gotten paid 4. Maybe it would have taken us another minute or 2 to find, but we would have found it because they do exist. And the fact is, now we're upset. We have taromos alai. With taromos on you, we're upset. Even though the truth is, you did say you're going to get paid like the Baal Bias, but why did you say 4? The Baal Bias said 3. That's answer number 1. Eboy say hacha babal. So let's look at question 1. Armalei Baal Bias zil oigerli pual betlasa. Be'azli hu b'yamlehem ba'arba. Be'el fanim. In what situation al karcha yitin arba? When do you have to still give 4? So if the guy said Sechar Chamalai, so then the Shliach has to give the 4. And also, in Kol Po'alim Ba'arba, if everyone gets paid 4 anyway, then the Baal Bias has to give 4. It doesn't make any difference. Okay, because that's the minimum wage. You can't go below it. Alternatively, we're talking about the workers, Babal Bias Askinan. Yarmulei Ilav di Armadlan Barba. We're talking about the Baal Bias. That they said, if it wasn't that he said 4, Havizila Bon Milsa, it would have been difficult Ita Gure to be able to get this. So therefore you only get 3. So what does this mean? So really it's not that the Shliach is the one that said this. The Baal Bias himself said 4, right? So again, as we said on the top, if the Baal Bias said 4 and then the guy said 3, so then what's the Tarumais? They were Makablet. So the answer is the Amrle Ilav the Amrlan Barba Havizil Ban Milsa to Tagure. It would have been difficult for him to be able to get someone. So therefore, that is the reason. So if you look at Rashi, Babal Bias Askinon, it's Bepoyel Sheshul Atzmo Sadais Shen Shalo. They actually have their own fields. They do Niskro Melechas Acherim Imo B'Yoisel Demes Chirus. It's not going to be worth it for them to work unless they're going to get more than they would have to pay for someone else. If you didn't say 4, I wouldn't have done it myself, right? I wouldn't have done it myself. I would have just worked in my own field. Okay. All right. So that is the situation here. Okay, that's another explanation. We're talking about workers. Since he said 4, we worked a lot harder. So yeah, some people get paid 3, some people get 4, but it's understood that if you get paid 4, you have to work harder because you're getting paid more. So once we heard 4, so therefore we worked a lot harder. So the Gemara says, okay, so let's say let's see their work. So if it's in fact better, maybe we should get paid 4. The answer is Barivka. We're talking, says Rashi, Shachafru Chritz Svivo Sada. What their job was, they had to make indentations and dig around the field. Vein Malachta Nikeras. And the work is not so easily seen because it's filled up with water. So Ran says Rivka Nami Mediyada. Ran says Demali Maya Yadia. Because it's already now filled up with water, you can't see what their work was. But they did work harder, apparently. The Baal Bias said it. Barba. He said that you're going to get paid 4. And the Shliach said 3. But again, I thought we said that they accepted 3. So what's the problem? There's a pasuk that you shouldn't withhold good from your owner, from your friend. In other words, why did you undercut us when the Baal Bias was willing to pay us 4 anyway? Why'd you tell us 3? So they'll get 3, but they were hitu, they were deceived by the shliach. Now pshita, it is simple, and whenever it says the word pshita, I always get nervous. It's usually not a simple gemara. If the Baal Bayis says you're going to get paid 3, V'ozali, whom the guy went Amalei Barba and said 4, the Amalei, and he said, quote, Kamosh Yom Baal Habayis, you will be paid as the Baal Bayis, Daita Liyui. The Das is on the higher quote. Says Rashi, V'livchais mikitzbatzoi shalzeh amru elu haisif. It was only to be added. So the fact that you added the statement, it must be that you're adding something. And therefore, your das is really on the 4. El Iyamalei Baal Habayis Bar Baal, the Baal Bayis said 4, but Azalihu Armalahu, but Talas, the guy said 3. If you remember Kamash Yamar Baal Habayis, whatever the Baal Bayis says, my. Adibur Dideka Samchi, are they being samich on his words? Yermale Mehimna Salon Dahachi Amr Baal Bayis. I trust is what the Baal Bayis said. O Dilma Dibur the Baal Bayis Kasamchi. Are they relying on the Baal Bayis? Therefore, are we paying again 3 or 4? So Tashma Havili Giti, provide for me this get. Who's saying this? Says Rashi. Ha'isha Sha'amr Echad. A woman says to a person, Im Tim says Baili, if you come across my husband, Emor Loi, say to my husband, Shiishlach li eskiti biyadacha, that you should send my get into your hands. V'tiyaseh shlucha shel Baili legarsheni, and you'll be a shliach for my husband that I should be divorced. Gishmagia get liyadi, so that when the get comes into my hand, the shliach l'hoylacha al habal lasais, and you'll be my husband's shliach, ve'ishim is garashas, and I'm going to be divorced. Get liyada, when the get comes into my hand, the shliach l'kabal al isha, lasa shehu shlucha kamoisa, so she can make a shliach l'kabala, not a shliach l'halacha. So a shliach l'kabala means a shliach to accept the get. The woman accepts the get, or she can make a shliach to accept the get on her behalf. She cannot appoint a shliach to bring the get for her husband. The shliach al-halach is the husband can make a shliach to have someone bring the get on her behalf, on his behalf. The husband cannot make a shliach into a shliach kabbalah. So actually, they're not going to be divorced since we rely on what the shliach said, which is going to probably answer our question. We'll see. So havili giti v'ishtacha amra hiskabili giti. It be makabel my get. V'hu omer heluch kamasha amra, and he says whatever she says. So amra nachman amravu amra b'fil haget liyada, even once the get actually goes into her hand, and migrashas, she's not divorced. So shema mina adibur didei kasamach. We see that we're relying on his words. If we're actually relying on her words, then she should be divorced from the time she gets the get, since he made the shliach into a shliach halacha, and therefore that should be acceptable. So again, she can make a shliach kabbalah, not a shliach halacha, but the husband cannot make the shliach into a shliach kabbalah, because again, the husband can only make a shliach halacha. So therefore, they're not divorced, since we rely on what the shliach says. And therefore, because of that, we're semich on the husband's words. And therefore, it's not considered to be, and therefore, so too, we are going to apparently, as Rashi says, so again, we see a raya that we're going to be semich on the shliach. Rav Ashi, as we continue to Ayin Vav Amud Beis, Haki Hashta. You can't compare these two cases at all. Bishlomi Yamrit Ivcha, I can understand if you said the other way around. The Iskabali Giti, that she tells the shliach to be makabel my get, which she's allowed to do, because she's allowed to make a shliach a kabbalah. The Ishtacha, and then the shliach says that the Ishtacha Amr, that your wife said Havile Giti. Now the shliach is the one, she did the right thing, but the shliach said that she made me into a shliach halacha, which she can't do. Havili giti v'hu omer, and the husband says halach kamosh amra. Now go ahead and take it. You're a shliach halacha, like she said, which again she cannot make into a shliach halacha, but shliach halacha, but she didn't. She made him into a shliach kabbalah. The Yom Rav Nachman Rav Ravu Amarav, because she get liyada migrashas. In that case, it does work. Almadia dibor didaka samach. We rely on her words because her words were correct. She made him into a shliach Kabbalah, which is acceptable. So even though the shliach said something different, it doesn't make any difference. Now, after inami, mishegin get liyada migareshus, or when the get gets into her hands, she's divorced. Alma di dibor dideka samach. We rely on her. El hasim misham da akar shliach l'shuchuse l'gamri. The problem over there in the Reisha is because he completely uprooted his shlichus. Yermulei shliach HaKabbalah havina. He said that he's a shliach HaKabbalah. V'halacha lehavina. So again, what happened was in the Reisha, the reason why it's not good, is she's havi ligiti. She made him into a shliach lahalacha, and she can't. So even though he said that you're a shliach HaKabbalah, that I'm a shliach HaKabbalah, it doesn't make any difference because she said the wrong thing. So therefore, because of that, that's the reason why it doesn't work, because she doesn't have the ability to make him into a shliach lahalacha, only shliach HaKabbalah. And the fact that he said the opposite, so therefore, he was completely oiker the shlichus anyway. Iboy seima, haitana chazunami hitu karile. So going all the way back to our question of our Mishnah, does our Mishnah really mean that the workers deceived one another? It means that they actually retracted. The sign, you hire workers, vihitu as balabayas, or balabayas hitoisan, that they end up deceiving one another. So it sounds like our Mishnah. Now, b'medvar amurim, when do we say that there's nothing but complaints? Shul holchu. It's only that they didn't start the job yet. And the reason is, since they could still hire themselves out to someone else, as it's early on in the day, they have tarumos, since it's a tircha to rehire yourself. Let's say, for example, these drivers went and there was no grain. Powalim, these workers went, umatzu sada kashi lacha. They found that the field was wet, and therefore they couldn't do any work with it. You have to pay them completely, because they already now went all the way out to do their job, and therefore because of that, that is the of the din. However, it says so they get a bit less, although they started, and yet and once they got there, they saw they couldn't completely do their job properly because of the conditions. But it's not like they're going to get a full payment. Actually, that's when they didn't do any work. If they did start working, we evaluate how much they did. That you evaluate how much harvesting for 2 salayim. If they only did half the job, then you pay them half of 2 salayim, give them 1 selah. Beged le'egor b'shnei salayim. Let's say in order to weave a garment, they're supposed to get paid 2. Let's say they wove half, so you should give them, and they left half. So shaman lehen es masha asu. You pay from what they did. Therefore, hayafish shisha dinarim. Let's say it was worth 6. Nois lehem selah. You give them half of their job. Or let them finish the job and then they'll get paid in full. Which means, if in the interim it goes down, so if they didn't complete their job, you only have to pay them half of what it's now worth. But if in fact they complete their job, then you should pay them the full amount that was agreed upon. V'im sela, nice lam sela. Rav Daisa says, you have to actually pay them how much it will cost to finish the job. If it's 6, you should give them 2 denarim. If it's 6 denarim, you should give them a shekel, which is 2 denarim. And then they get paid the rest. Vim sela, nice lehem sela. This is only something where you can always replace. You're not going to lose out. Like, for example, flax in the water. which is davar avod. Davar avod tzarich lehem oy matan. As we said, when it comes to that situation, the language of the Mishnah, then you could either hire more expensive workers or trick them to do the job. Okay, that is Naisa himself. So Gemara's going to explain what exactly is maton about tricking them. We'll see that in a second. Let's look at this Rashi from before. Ella Hasam. When it came to the get about relying on her words, Ein kan shlichus kidikamer. Ein kan shlichus shahari hashliach lo nisratza. The shliach doesn't want to do this job. The ha'akar leilo shulchus legamri. You're completely removing the shlichus. Yermle shliach ha'kabbalah i'avshli hasos. To be a shliach ha'kabbalah, I'm not going to do. I don't want to go and come back and give this get all the way to her. However, I can be a shliach halacha. Let me read that again. I can be a shliach kabbalah because once I accept it, that's it. You're divorced. I don't have to go give it to you because if you're shliach halacha litoch hagil yada, a shliach lahalacha has to physically give the get to her hands because he's being a shliach for the husband, and therefore the husband either gives her the get or the shliach gives her the get. So a shliach would rather be a shliach kabbalah than a shliach halacha, which requires more tircha. He'll say iyashil asos. I don't do that. Hilkach if he'll nimlach, even if he changes his mind, he give etzla ends a shliach. Even if he ends up saying, "Oh, I'll go and find her," that's not considered to be a shliach. Shenita legerishin kiblu al menaskein. So it's an interesting way that Rashi explains this, is that a person would rather be a shliach halacha than shliach kabbalah, because shliach kabbalah you have to go all the way and find her. Therefore, the fact is that he really didn't want to be a shliach for that. Therefore, even ends up giving her the get. That's the reason why it's not going to be good, because he really was never makabel himself upon receiving the get to have done so. Okay. Now, b'medavar morim, as we said, b'davar shein avad davar havad seichel lehem oy matan. So, ketzan matan. How do we trick them to continue their job? So, armulhem sela katsatzti lachem. So, I said to you guys that you're going to be getting a paid wage of a sela. Bo tlu shtayim. Go and finish up the job for 2. But he really only needs to give him 1 sela at the end anyway. So he's almost like lying, but he can do this. V'yad kama sarchalahem ad arboim v'chamishim zuz. So you should work until 40 arboim, 40 and 50 zuz. So what does that mean? In Rashi. Okay. So b'medavar amorim bisman shein sham poal liskor. That's only when there's no other workers. You can end up deceiving them, saying that I'll pay you more, just finish it, and then you end up not paying them more. Let's say you can easily just hire someone else, even instead of aved, and you really need this job done, or else you're going to incur a loss. But you can easily get someone else to do it. Okay. Tani Tanagami Derav. Nice lehem sacharim mishalim. He says you actually have to pay them the full amounts, since the driver went all the way to that area. Armle Chabibi Amr Ilua Nahavoy. If I was there, lo havino hen ella kapoil bottle. I would have only paid them like a poil bottle, because they didn't end up working to the extent, because the field was wet and everything. Yet I'm going to have sacharim mishalim. I'm going to pay them full. We said in we said clearly that you don't have to pay someone the same amount. Our answer is Lu Simuha Kamei. It wasn't completed in front of him. It says Rashi, Lu Simu Seif HaBraisa Lefonav. The Braisa wasn't completed. It doesn't mean that you pay him full. You just didn't hear the rest of the line, right? But the truth is that you only pay him like a Yoshev bottle. It was actually completed. He said, I wouldn't have given these workers anything. You pay them anything? Why? What do you mean? How could you not pay him? It says you're supposed to pay. Question is, when at night, before, the workers should have known not to go out the next day, as the field can't be worked on, so therefore it's their fault. Says Rashi, if they went to check out where they were going to work the night before, and they saw the field, they didn't figure out it's wet. It says on the side, Shema Yardu Geshamim, may start pouring soon at night. You shouldn't pay them at all. They saw the field themselves. Why would they accept this job? They would probably know that by the next morning they're going to get there, they can't work there anyway. So therefore I wouldn't have paid them anything. Kiha Diyomer Rava, similar to what Rabbi said, Haiman, this person, the Agar Gire L'Rivka, a person was hired to plow and make ditches. Vyasa Mitra, and the rain came, Umali Maya, and all of a sudden it got filled up with water. So Itzal Arm Urta, if this person already looked at the field from before and anticipated it was going to be raining, it was going to be a lot of issues with the ground, as we continue on Zanamanav, stated the Pualim, then it's a loss for the workers. Says Rashi, Geshamim Shiardu Hesed Pualimhu, it's their loss. Delo Yohimu Midi, don't have to pay them anything. Yermahu Mazlaichu Garim, it was your Mazla that caused it. Lot Saril Arim or if you didn't check out from before, so therefore that's going to be the distinction, whether you pay them anything at all, or like a person who is a poil batal, or should you pay them nothing because they already looked at the situation, should have assessed it and realized that there was problems with the field. Question TAB. Seichas ha'omanim ba'albayis amr b'tlaso shleich amr ba'arba. Kama tzarich litin lehem kishlo tirchu tvei. That's a long question. So I got it right. So how much do you have to pay these people? So if the shliach said sachar chamalai, that I'm going to pay you, then the shliach has to pay for. If he says it's the schar the ba'albayis, if that's what the shliach said, so it depends. If the workers get paid for, so the ba'albayis have to get paid for. If the typical job gets paid 3, they get 3. If some people get paid 3 and some people get paid 4, then the ba'albayis only has to give 3. Okay. TB3. Amo ba'albayis wiskor poal b'shleisha v'omer lehem havi ba'arba uscharchem olai mahadin. Okay. Ima shliach omer sarchem olai oz ha'poal mekablim arba. They get 4. And they get paid by the shliach. And I wrote in parentheses, Avim b'makam shekul mekablim rak shleisha oz ulai he mekablim shleisha adkam.